Welcome, everybody. We have a really great topic today. We're talking about the appliances you shouldn't buy in 2025. We have a great presentation by our CEO, Steve Sheinkopf, and along with us today is our Director of Sales, Francesco Froio. We are going to be sharing the recording and presentation with everybody, so no need to jot down notes. We'll be sharing that very likely tomorrow with everyone. And with that out of the way, we'll turn it over to Steve.
Thank you, Pat. Appliances you shouldn't buy. This is our showroom in Norton here. You might want to consider not buying some of the things after seeing this presentation. That said, I'm going to show you a lot of appliances and bad ideas you shouldn't buy. But I want to get started with something. We're kind of in a one-size-fit-all industry where, if you're looking for a high-end brand or a high-end kitchen or even affordable luxury, you're going to be shown, Sub-Zero, Thermador, Miele. For affordable luxury, maybe it's LG, Samsung, Cafe. But some products can be very good for some people and really bad for others. And let's take a look at this one. This is actually a really nice refrigerator. SKS and Thermador make really the same in 48-inch. Thermador has also in 42. This is inspired in some ways. All metal interior. You can put panels on it, and so it's seamless to the actual cabinet. You can't tell whether it's a cabinet or a fridge. On the left there is it makes two different kinds of ice cubes, slower dissolving cubes for your drinks, and regular cubes as well. And on the right, that's a convertible drawer. It can be freezer or refrigerator. It has multiple temperature settings, very flexible. And for some people, this is really good. This is our showroom manager in Dorchester. She's 5'9" plus heels here. But for other people, this is a really bad idea. I mean, the shelves aren't even at the top, and she's going to have to lift stuff overhead, which is not desirable. And the reason is because the Sub-Zero's got the compressor on the top, and one drawer. This has multiple drawers and the compressor on the bottom. That means the refrigerator cavity is taller, which may be good for some and not good for others. Speaking of which, the combo washer and dryer could be a godsend for some people because it only operates at 110 volt and you don't need a vent for it. So as long as you've got water and 110 power, you can put it anywhere. And for a lot of people, this is really good. You want to do laundry before you go to bed? Guess what? You can. You can put them in dirty, comes out clean and dry. For the office, no problem. However, for a family of 4, not so much, because it takes twice as long to do the load. Heat pumps take a little bit longer because you've got a compressor, heat exchanger, and evaporator instead of just elements venting out. Plus, when you go home tonight and you've got a lot of laundry, you do the wash, put in the dry, and then you reload, something you can't do here. So when these kids are in soccer practice, along with that cat, it's going to be a problem. So do a lot of laundry might not be the best solution for you. Dual fuel ranges, especially in the high end, they're advertised as the best. You've got the speed of gas with the dry, precise heat of electric. Of course, if you roast a lot, it's better. Gas is better because of moisture heat. And in broiling, you've got infrareds in a gas versus an electric broil. So broiling's way better in gas. Those are the sear elements you see on those expensive outside grills. Now, it's a little bit different because certain brands, specifically Miele and Wolf, add tons of features that are dual fuel. But typically, gas versus electric depends on how you cook. And if you really want the speed, you go induction. Induction is way faster than gas, even that 25,000 BTU Blue Star. Way better simmer. Child safe because it needs a pan to activate the magnets. That really is induction. And easier to vent as well. However, you can't grill or sous vide. I know sous vide you can do in one SKS professional range, but you can't grill on an induction range. Speaking of inductions, you may like the speed. However, in certain areas, induction cooktops are very reliable, but ranges a little bit more than the average, at about 10% repair in the first year. The reason is these are 50 amps, so if you've got a lot of voltage spikes in your area, it can affect the control panels. So depends what you want, where you buy. Now, this is the most interesting two appliances I've seen. This is a KBIS. This is a downdraft that is also a spice rack. And if you see that hand there, he's pointing at a refrigerator. You got refrigerators on either side. It doesn't matter. Downdrafts don't work. We'll get to downdrafts in a second. But the new kind of cooktops, this is the inductions underneath the granite, which is really interesting. Any granite cooktop can be, in theory, when this comes out, your cooktop. Good idea, but what happens when you need to repair it? It means you got to lift the granite, and then you get 4 people lifting that granite block and a very nervous repair tech underneath. So that's certainly a question to ask. Speaking of which, a lot of people will ask, what's the best brand? And it really depends on what you want. Each have their features. However, one of the things, a lot of you on the webinar today from outside of the Boston area, and you're going to go to most appliance stores don't have a repair or a service department. What they'll say to you is, don't worry, the factory has local service in our area. And you better hope so, because we're known for sales, but we're more in service and install than we are for sales. So one of the questions that you should be asking is, who has the best service in the area? And that's going to be part of your decision. So really, when you shop for appliances, and we're going to get into some other stuff that you should consider as well, you want to really consider not the magazine or not what your neighbors and friends, but how do you really use this stuff, and what has the best service for when things go wrong? Because you're gonna have problems eventually with whatever you buy. All right, let's talk about big universal problems, right? And this is the audience interaction version. How many people cooked today or yesterday, last week, or even ever? I'm willing to bet that you used that particular burner right there. Now that burner has changed since I started in 1986. This burner is on a regular cooktop is 19 to 21,000 BTUs now, versus 8,000 when I started. So it emits a lot more. You have a lot more emission than you used to. And this is really what comes out of a gas burner and somewhat an electric induction. You don't get the carbon monoxide, but you get everything else. Now, the real problem with that is, unlike 40 years ago when I started, now you've got much more energy efficient windows and much more energy efficient building materials. So these emissions stay in your house longer, and you really want them vented. So let's look at how restaurants do. This is my daughter's second favorite restaurant, the Fuji Steakhouse. And a lot of people like to say, well, I like to entertain when I cook. Well, these guys entertain when they cook, literally. But let's take a look at how they vent, right? If you take a look at the vent goes to it's over the complete surface of the cooktop. The vent's an island. It could be on the wall as well, if he was cooking on the wall. And the venting goes straight up. Now, the motor's typically a higher CFM. That's the amount of cubes. When we say CFM, when someone tells you CFM, it's how many cubes get exhausted in 1 minute's time, right? So they have a high CFM, a deep hood, and a very straight run to the top. That's for people that cook. So if that's how people cook, why would you buy a downdraft? A downdraft is exactly opposite. You've got a really narrow aperture in any brand, whether it's a pop-up. There's brand new downdrafts in KBIS coming from Europe that are integral to the cooktop, right? But even so, how would a lot of, say, smoke, grease, and all that, all those emissions be vented against gravity through a small aperture? Then you've got a transition that reduces static flow in the longer run. It doesn't work when you cook a lot, or even some. And especially you're cooking on the front burners. Where's the downdraft typically located? In back. So that's something you should stay away from. Now, for someone that's got a broken existing downdraft, I'm not saying remodel your kitchen. There are certainly better ways. Typically, you would want to cook on the back burners, keep the windows open so you at least get a fresh air return. Same thing with over-the-range microwaves. 2 years ago, I moved into an apartment, and since moved back to my house, I had a LG black stainless, we'll get to that in a second, over a Kenmore Elite 1990s range. And I can tell you it doesn't work because it doesn't fit over the burners. And the reason is over-the-range microwaves have been around since 1989. They're 16 inches deep. The depth of the front burner that you said you're cooking on earlier is 22 to 23 inches. Ditto with shallow hoods, right? Most of these European types are 17 to 19 inches deep and don't cover the burners that we're actually cooking on, right? And those are really big design issues that are easily preventable by just buying the right ventilation. You know, if you're doing a wood hood, just make sure it's 22 to 23 inches off the back, right? And a lot of people are doing this for, you know, they want to entertain when they cook, and I get that. But typically there's two ways of doing this right. Is A, put the sink in the island, and sink is, you go to your sink more than any other appliance in your kitchen, and then you can put your stoves on the wall. The other thing is you can just put an island hood in the middle. Of course, you don't get the same kind of lighting opportunities if you put a hood in the middle, right? So that's how you mitigate it. Now, these are milder issues. First one is the color brown. It doesn't work. My grandfather sold it in coffee. Dad sold it in cappuccino. We sold it in Tuscan and truffle. The reason is brown just doesn't match. Brown glass or brown metal doesn't match the any shade of brown cabinets. You'd think it'd be a good color, just doesn't work. Black stainless don't buy because it's not black. It's an oxide coating. Once you breach it, it's you're going to see the stainless steel underneath it. It is unrepairable and unwarrantyable. Simple solution here is just to buy black. Custom colors. Your eyes are drawn to red. Pop color is really nice to make your kitchen unique. However, if you're doing all of this, you're going to make sure that you're going to like all of this for the 10 to 12 years you typically own your kitchen. A, whether it's too much of a visual, and B, whether this particular appliance company is still going to make this color when you go to replace it. So something to consider. And you can buy really a lot of different brands in any color of the rainbow. The trendy colors are still white, which was the trendy color when I started, and just regular straight black or gloss black. Extra quiet dishwashers, you only need 44 decibels and you won't hear it. Now, I've been called out on our YouTube channel saying that, yes, Bosch has got a 38 decibel and Miele has a 37 decibel dishwasher. It's $3,600. It is technically quieter, but my response is, what is quieter than something you won't hear? You only need to spend $900 to $1,100 on a quiet dishwasher. You know, if you want some more features, that's the reason to step up, but you don't need any more than 44. Okay, relabeled premium appliances. You have to understand what you're buying with certain brands. Like, I'm not picking on just Whirlpool, KitchenAid, or JennAir, and I'll explain the differences between what really is the same range. We could be talking about Profile, G, and Cafe, although people typically buy Cafe for the color and accessories. We talk about LG and LG Studio, or Frigidaire and Electrolux. Typically, when you take a look at this range, this is a Whirlpool. It's got one power burner and convection. Step up to KitchenAid for $1,000 more, you get a warming drawer and another power burner. And then you go to JennAir. Two of the burners are a little bit more powerful, and you get a baking drawer. Now, where it gets really interesting is the kind of the premium brands, like the Viking dishwasher was Beko for a while, and you'd pay like a $2,000 premium. Blue Star used the Beko refrigerators for their freestanding refrigerators, and there was a $1,000 premium for essentially a label. Kind of like this. This is a trick question. Which oven is larger, the Bosch 36-inch or the LG 30? Look again. Bosch is 3.7, because that's not a Bosch. That's a rebranded SMEG unit, which is good. This is a beautiful unit, but the Italians typically use smaller sizes. So really, if you want a small size, you may want to consider SMEG, although Bosch is a way better service network around here. But just understand what you're buying. bigger problems. These are some issues that nobody else is going to talk about, and there may or may not be a bigger problems depending. Pro style ranges. There are more of these out than ever. There was, I think, 55 exhibitors at KBIS. I recognized. I didn't recognize 30 of them. Now, typically, people are enticed by the lower price and kind of the similar spec. It looks pro. I get that. But typically, you're not going to get the burner. You're not going to get the pro style burner. You have one that's maybe a higher BTU. The boiling on these is less than half, and you don't get an infrared typically. And just before you buy something, let's just look. I don't like throwing the word quality. I think it's an ambiguous kind of term, but just look at the fit and finish, open the door, that sort of thing, right? Again, as I said, these are some of the brands. These are only a portion of the brands that are out there that you should take a look at. One of them had a carbon monoxide problem and a total recall, and you don't want to be a part of that. So really look at the product, make sure there's available service before you buy it, although the pricing is enticing. Buying appliances online is kind of scary, and I'll tell you why. Appliance Connection was the biggest, and they went out of business last year, along with 100 other appliance stores. A lot of these guys operate just one warehouse. So if you're in California, most of them operate out of New York. So typically you take a look at a Samsung washer that you buy at an attractive price. That Samsung washer makes its way from Korea to New York and then comes back to you. Now, one of the reasons why we don't sell out of our area, because that was a question that was asked, is once you get past the delivery people and the support people, it is really hard to deliver something that long with people you don't know in warehouses that you don't operate. So you have to really look at reviews to understand what the process is before you dive in as per se. And the same thing for any store. I don't know, we had an appliance store that closed 2 years ago. They took like $3.5 million of deposits and getting people to pay by check and cash. I think a simple safety is playing by credit cards. Cons was publicly traded with over 500 locations. They went out of business, I think, late last year. So just be careful where you buy. And extended warranties, let me save you some money here. Don't buy them. Even though that French door refrigerator with the dispenser is going to leak within 5 years, and that gas igniter is going to need service within 5 years, because most of the extended warranties that you buy have no actual service behind it. As crazy as that seems. So although Jake from State Farm is great from hobnobbing athletes, really be better off with service tax. The only way I'd buy the only way you should buy an extended warranty is with either a store that has service, and you may want to check to make sure they have good service, or from an independent service provider. That is the only way to buy appliance extended warranties. So, because again, this is another day here at Yale. We do more service than sales. So it's a real problem in our industry. With that said, thank you. And our next one's going to be how to start your outside kitchens. A lot of stuff you can do. And, for those in our area, please schedule a showroom visit so you can see this stuff. And you can always download our Appliance Buyer's Guide wherever you are. I think it's in its 7th edition. So a lot of good stuff. And now we've got plenty of time to answer your live and regular questions that have been previously submitted. So thank you.
All right, Steve, let's get going here. We got a bunch of questions to get to. So first one, straight out, how will tariffs affect price?
That really depends on what actually happens. Whether the tariffs go in effect, how much they go in effect. Mm-hmm. I think right now we've had a bunch of price increases. I know that was a lot of questions. Sub-Zero, Wolf, all the Bosch brands, Thermo, Gaggenau, LG, GE have all had the price increases. So we're waiting for the next shoe to drop. The problem is if you're getting a tariff war with China, a lot of the parts come from there. So, and appliances are made of stainless steel. So if the tariffs go in, this could be a big problem eventually. But I wouldn't wait. I would think we have to see what happens, but third or fourth quarter, it could be a real problem. So if you know what you want to buy, sooner it's going to be better than later, or at least get a quote and have the salesperson stay on top of it for you. So when the tariffs happen, you can strike before you get the price increases.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, typically if you know what you want, you can put a deposit down on that order, and that kind of protects you. Like, you should still be able to cancel outright. You should still be able to make any changes to the order. But if you know what you want, now's a good time to kind of put that deposit down and kind of guarantee that pricing that you see today.
Yeah, sooner is better than later, but you're still getting, 4 points of interest on the other side. You can always do a 0% financing and
Yep.
and do that too. But sooner it's going to be better. But I wouldn't panic because we have an oversupply still in the industry.
All right, next one. So these next two are kind of similar. So it says one, and you talked about this a little bit, but why are gas ranges bad for the environment? And gas versus electric, are gas appliances being phased out?
Yes and no. Gas is phased out in a lot of the cities. You can't have new multi-unit construction with a gas range. That would be Boston, New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, a lot of places in California. I'm not sure about Chicago, and you have to check in your area if you're building a multi-unit. As far as why they're bad in the environment, you certainly have the methane, I believe, the emissions that contribute to climate change. On the other side, gas doesn't use a lot of amps. So if we're all changing out to induction, you're going to need 50 amps. So you need power plants.
Mm-hmm.
For induction, you're going to need 38 more amps times however many houses. So you need that much power plant, which adds to emissions. So but a lot of the stuff comes from California because gas lines are very vulnerable during earthquakes as well. So that's kind of the whole thing, as I understand it, that emissions, problems with gas lines during earthquakes, and I guess for gas, you have just general leakage that enters the environment as well that you don't get with electric.
And really kind of leading, from that question says, induction stoves, are they worth the money? Induction in general here.
Well, it depends what you want to do with it. I think it's better certainly than if you want something fast, you want to simmer, you want something more child safe, you want less of a venting issue, cleanability, because the way induction works is it excites the middle molecules in your pan cooks the food, so the glass doesn't typically get as hot, so things don't stick to it. It's easier to clean. I like induction cooktops personally, and I like.
Yeah, I think.
No, go on. I'm sorry.
Oh no, sorry. I was just going to echo that point. I'm a huge fan of induction. I just think in a lot of ways it outperforms from really a speed and power perspective, because you're not like with gas. You're always talking about BTUs and 20,000 BTU, but so much of that is wasted with the flame off the side of the pan, where induction is really 90% efficient. Whatever power is there, you're really getting all that straight to the pan. So from a speed perspective, from just the flexibility from going from a high boil to a low simmer really instantly, and like you said, just safety, cleanability, there's really a lot of things to like. And is it worth the money? Like induction, there's a lot of very affordable induction ranges and induction cooktops as well. So it's not like like this was years and years ago where you're spending a ton of money as a premium for induction. There's a lot of good affordable options there too.
Yeah, but worry about, like, if you're asking, the other question is, should I go from gas to induction? Just understand you're probably going to have to certainly the electrical around the range is going to change. You're going to rewire back to the box. You may need more amperage in the box. You need a plumb. Well, in this state, you need a plumber for everything.
Yeah.
And you would need an electrician. Base cost is around $3,500.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So next one. Why are so many non-built-in freestanding refrigerators French door? 2 doors up top, typically, 1 freezer drawer in the bottom.
You got me. They were, when I first started, I guess in the 70s, Whirlpool had the Princess models. They were discontinued because they couldn't figure out the gasket. But I think a lot of people, Our generation does a lot more in the refrigerator and less so in the freezer. So you get less freezer space and you get more lateral refrigerator space. That's what makes it popular. Side-by-sides were like the premium refrigerator of yesteryear. It's very organized storage, but you don't get a lot of it. It's like for small casseroles, especially in the 30, 33 inch and 36. The most common is 36, especially in that size. You don't get a lot of that. So that's why French doors seem popular. The better question is what's better for you? If you want more organized freezer space than a side by side, and you don't get as much leakage on a side by side as you do in a French door, because it's coming right at the cubes are coming right out of the freezer. So
Yeah, and like you said, I'm really a freestanding 36-inch side, which, no standard size, but that's the most common. Yeah, you're not going to get any single doors. And some of that too, I think, is, the door is definitely larger, which, you still have that with the built-in. Could be a little bit more top heavy as well, like if it's not built into a cabinet, that sort of thing, whereas obviously you're built-in secured tightly to the wall, where freestanding really is not. No, really anti-tip brackets or anything like that with those either. Okay, so here's another one. Is Thermador side swing open ovens really better than the Bosch version?
this goes to what I basically said in the beginning. Of relabeled luxury appliances. I should have mentioned Bosch Thermador. In terms of the dishwasher, it's the same. In fact, I think the Bosch dishwasher is a little better than the more expensive Thermador if we're looking at features. But I don't see any real differences between the side opening of Thermador versus Bosch. It reminds me of like the car industry. I mean, they have like 5 different car types, which really the same car distributed differently. It's really the same with Thermador and Bosch in a lot of different areas. But Thermador still's got the better luxury stuff, the Pro ranges. But when you get to built-ins, very similar.
Yeah, for sure. A couple, as far as performance, they're going to be very similar. Bosch will tell you, or Thermador will say on their higher end, they have like little features, like you kind of said before, like a stronger broiler. There's, you have a version on the Thermador that is knobs versus kind of all touch on a Bosch. So if you like knobs better warranty. But like you said, they're kind of like smaller features that you're going to get there too. Okay. Next one. How much hassle is it to fill and maintain an unplumbed steam oven?
I use mine today. It's not a big deal. Basically, it kicks out its like tray when it needs to be filled, and you just fill it at the faucet. I've never. I think I've steamed up to 20 minutes, and I had plenty left. I'd have to check the specs to see how long, but you can cook a meal in an unplumbed steam oven, no problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they typically last, I think they're supposed to, depending on the brand, 90 minutes to 2 hours with the tank. And unless, really, unless you're doing a new build, a plumb steam oven can certainly be much more difficult to install, because you got to get obviously the water line there. And there's some flexibility and convenience there, but for the most part, yeah, I don't think it's a necessary thing to have. Next one is, how useful are steam ovens, and is the steam function optional?
Yeah. You could. It's a combi, which is convection. I'll tell you, I love my steam oven only because when you're adding moisture, you're adding texture, and you're not baking out flavor, right? So what you make in a steam oven is way better. When you think about the worst possible cooking method, the microwave, which we all use because we're time starved, right? But what it does is, the microwaves target moisture. That's why everything comes out dry. Then you talk about radiant. It doesn't matter. The radiant is you're baking something, so you're really baking the moisture at it, albeit at a lower rate than a microwave. And then we look at, say, steam, where we're adding moisture, so you're getting more of the actual flavor that was intended. I know that sounds like, what's he talking about? Just, I've cooked in a steam oven before. It's just everything that you make in a radiant oven is better in a steam oven, without question.
Yeah, and like you said, really, you can cook just about anything in that steam oven. Steam convection, you can use it or not use it. But like you said, for the most part, you're going to want to use it because everything comes out better. You can reheat in there as well. That just, might take definitely longer, like you said, than a microwave, but it's just going to come out so much better. And the one thing kind of historically with the steam ovens, really, they've always been a little bit smaller than your traditional wall ovens. But you're starting to see bigger versions there too, with Miele and Thermador, with some kind of taller versions of those steam ovens to be able to fit some bigger items in there also. So absolutely very functional, and a lot of things that you can cook in a steam oven.
Yeah.
Here's one. Can your wine cellar beverage center appliances be stacked? Is there a kit used? How does this stack?
I don't think ours does. I know True does. And
Right.
I think that yeah, because you're worried about the compressor adding heat or being obscured from yeah. I don't think ours can.
Right.
But you can buy. I know True you can. I'd have to look at some. We'd have to look at some other ones, but you can always buy like a full size wine cabinet that will do essentially the same thing as well.
Yeah, right. So True for sure, they have a stacking kit specifically that you can use to stack those. Not a super common application, but also like you said, like with some of these other ones where you have those towers, the full size columns. Monogram makes one, Sub-Zero makes one, where it's kind of a wine up front, and then you have refrigerator drawers underneath. So there's definitely some different styles where if you didn't want all wine, you can kind of mix a little bit there too with some of these brands. Next question is steam ovens versus speed ovens.
I would say they both have the convection feature, or most do. In Jeffrey Wolf, good thinking. I was just reading the comments. Non-plumbed steam or coffee, you never have to worry about like interior leaks from the line going in, and that's always good because a slow leak is a real problem.
Yeah.
But that's a good call. Anyway, steam or speed. One you have a microwave that you can use as a convection oven, so you can get the speed without getting that microwavy flavor. But steam is about flavor and texture. It's not about cooking faster. That's the difference. It really depends on your lifestyle. Typically, it takes me 10 minutes to reheat in a steam oven. Maybe somewhere 8 to 12 minutes. Versus say 1.5 to 2 in a microwave. That's what you're looking at.
All right. Here's the next one is best refrigerator to replace a Sub-Zero in a $3 million home.
Oh, that's a loaded question. If you're replacing a Sub-Zero, Sub-Zero's got a very interesting way. The electrical, I think, is in the top right, or at least the old ones were. It's plumbed. Well, the plumbing is not a big deal, but the electrical's in the top right, so you probably have to move that. Now, do you want to get a freestanding one, which means you're going to have to replace a cabinet above it? You get like an LG or something inexpensively, Counter Depth Max or something like that. You'd get it $1,700, but then you got to build a cabinet over it. Or do you buy a built-in, say, Sub-Zero and have something that is kind of like a, in-out type of thing? Or do you go to a lesser expensive brand and maybe have to redo a little bit of the electrical? Really depends. Depends on what you want to do. I mean, you're really running the gamut there.
For sure. And I'd say, a home like that, Sub-Zero still, I'd say, top of the line when it comes to some of the built-in refrigeration for sure. There's different options if you want to do like something maybe a little different or more color with a True or a Blue Star or something like that. And certainly it's the size you have available or what you're trying to do. Really in these built-in spaces too, columns obviously has always been popular really for a while now, but what you're starting to see with a lot of brands now is bigger French door sizing. So not only in a 36-inch French door, the built-in, now you're starting to see the 42 inches, you're starting to see 48-inch French doors. And that I'd say is a real kind of trend happening now with built-in refrigeration in general with a lot of different brands. Are there induction cooktops that also include a gas burner?
No, but you can buy like a 2-burner module if you want. 2-burner gas module. I'm not. I think I know the answer, because when if you get a power outage, you can always light a gas. I get that.
Mhm. Yeah, it's really the only way is like, brands like Wolf, Gaggenau, Miele, where you kind of have those separate modules that you can kind of piece, usually 15 inches or so each, and you kind of just put them right side by side. What brands are reliable?
Depends what we're talking about, really. In laundry, LGG are very reliable. Samsung isn't bad too. We stopped selling it last year, but it's pretty reliable.
Mhm.
In terms of overall, it would be, by the way, these are service stats. I don't make these up, and I don't get compensated by the companies who I mentioned. But LG is number one. I know they've had refrigerator issues, and they do have a current compressor issue, but it's not as bad everyone makes it out. It's a 1.1% repair within the first 5 years, which is not bad in our industry. I certainly wouldn't take a plane if I had a 1.1% chance of not landing. But for our industry, 1.1 is pretty good. Again, some of the Thermador has been very reliable. Miele is pretty reliable. Sub-Zero Wolf, someone mentioned about parts. I think
Mhm.
one of the things that nobody talks about is what happens when there's a problem. I think they're probably the best at it. They keep, certainly parts longer than most, and they have better technical support than probably anybody. But that's what I would be looking at.
All right, which dishwasher is the best for 3 racks and best quality?
Bosch has been really good. They've got the Rackmatic with the third rack, and then the third rack on top of it. They've got the new Crystal Dry that uses a volcanic mineral to really dry plastics well. Certainly Miele with their third rack is probably the best third rack,
Mhm.
because if you've got like fine flatware, you put it in the Miele, and it holds the actual utensil so it doesn't scratch, if you're into that sort of thing. The new KitchenAid M series, the better M's got those slant racks.
Yeah.
Those are pretty good as well. In terms of reliability, I think LG does a great job. They've been the most reliable, although I get a lot of blowback on YouTube for that. But for our measurements, they're very reliable. And they've got steam. Steam helps loosen the food. They do a pretty good job too. But you get a lot of good options. I mean, dishwashers are pretty. You got some pretty good options between Bosch, KitchenAid, Miele, LG. I would say even Samsung, Profile. They're all pretty good.
Yeah, the nice thing too, with specifically on the third rack for Miele, kind of how it slides back and forth. So if you still have like a really tall glass or bottle or something like that underneath, you can kind of slide that third rack out of the way, and it kind of still will be able to go up. So some nice flexibility there with that too. Is Miele still made in Germany?
Yes, they have one factory in Gütersloh, Germany, but they're actually supposedly, it's really hard to know anymore, building a factory in Alabama, but not for dishwashers. I think it's cooking.
Okay.
By the way, it's talking about relabeled branded product. The Thermador old Thermador built-ins are made in the same plant as Miele. It's the same thing. Miele, Bosch, Thermador, same columns, although Miele's got the new 42, 48 French doors.
Yeah, Thermador. Any tips or strategies on selecting appliances, select appliance swap for an all-electric home?
Any tips or strategies for selecting appliances? For all electric homes? Well, most everything's electric, right? The combos are electric. That's not a bad idea. Most dryers are electric.
Yeah.
The cooking, you can get induction. That's really good. Almost any size. Now you get 48s, right? Blue Star,
Fisher
Wolf,
Paykel,
and
Wolf coming out.
Miele, and Aga. So you can do all that. I mean, pretty much everything else is electric. Dishwashers are electric, refrigerators are electric, hoods are electric. So I think really, if you go back to the first part of the presentation, is to figure out what you want, do some research on it, figure out what the repair network is behind it, and be comfortable with that. And that's what I would do. That would be my strategy.
Yeah, and like you mentioned before too, like be cognizant of the amperage and how much that's going to take, and make sure your home can support that.
Yeah, if you're going from gas to electric, especially in the range you're adding, possibly 38 to 40 amps. So.
Okay. Do induction ranges last as long as gas ranges? Any brands to avoid?
I would say right now, gas and electric ranges last longer because they haven't changed. Yeah, you're going to have an igniter issue with gas, but it's simple. The electric burner is covered by glass. Induction requires more amperage, so that's where the problems happen. As long as you don't have voltage problems, because the induction cooktop is really reliable, especially the Bosch brands. They require very little repair. In fact, we haven't repaired a Gaggenau in 2 years on 100 units. It's pretty unbelievable. But in terms of ranges, you're gonna need more service with induction. It's hard to know. They haven't been out as long, so I don't know. Brands to avoid is really anything that can't be fixed, unnamed brands. There's so much out there that you have to be aware of. And really you got to look at reviews in your area of brands and stores to keep yourself protected.
Okay. How much do appliances affect home sale value?
Unfortunately, too much, right? There's a guy, I think he's actually in his webinar. We were in a we lived in a unit. He lived in the next unit with his wife, and the roof collapsed in his unit, so it flooded him out because they used a defective shingle. Really, the things that should establish value are really the roof, the plumbing, the electrical, and the insulation in your basement and the foundation. But if I was to tell you that it's a GAF shingle or a bird shingle or one of those, nobody has an idea. So really, unfortunately, because appliances, you've got such great name recognition that they really drive a lot of the home sale value. Like you don't see top of the line shingle in a for sale, but you do see Sub-Zero Wolf, right? That is advertised as Sub-Zero Wolf. A guy, my jiu-jitsu teacher, is now a developer of all things, and every practice he's always asking me questions, and I say the same thing. If you're looking to sell it in a crowded market, put a better appliance. If you think you can sell it and get your money in a market where you don't need to spend as much, don't get Sub-Zero Wolf. But if you do, at least highlight what it does differently than the other brands. But typically, you look at real estate pages, it's about the appliances, not about the stuff you really should worry about.
Are heat pump dryers the same as ductless?
Well, heat pump dryers are ductless, so yes. But ductless dryers you can get in a condenser that nobody buys. The way condensers work, it's traditional heating elements, and they just use a condenser and blow it back into the room. Whereas heat pumps recirculate the heat in the drum, so they're much more energy efficient.
Looking for a 30-inch induction range. Any suggestions on what to get or not get?
What do you think, Fran?
So I think, again, here on a 30-inch, there's a lot of different options. Like brands like LG make really good, affordable induction ranges, like something that absolutely should be considered. There's also kind of in that pro space, if you're looking for something with more kind of intuitive controls, like a Wolf has the Wolf Gourmet, or a Miele with their Master Chef and a Steam Assist. So there's really kind of runs the gamut, I would say, and kind of depending on what you're looking for features, how much you're looking to spend. And I think there's some really great options on both ends there for sure. And then, I'd say there's others too, like you kind of pointed out before, like some, I'd say kind of that that you got to be careful of is some of those pro style ranges where they do have induction that doesn't give you the same features of like a flexible bridge burner and a much smaller oven. So those I would, just be careful where they might give you a look, but they're probably not going to give you even the features of something that's lesser priced. And like you showed, even a 36-inch can have a much smaller oven than a 30-inch in a brand like an LG or any other brands for sure.
Yeah, I would put Cafe in that with their double oven. I know there's been some questions on Cafe. What I think, I really like the line because it's unique, it's different. You're not going to spend Sub-Zero Thermador money. You'll spend a lot less. And they've got a lot of really cool features. My parents have a Cafe refrigerator, and the ice maker is really cool. I mean, it fills up precisely. It's a pretty cool fridge. I mean, it's got a Keurig coffee and hot water. I mean, you probably don't need that, but really, it's nice with colors. I like the black and copper and the white and brass. Really nice. That's a good line.
All right, let's go to some live questions here. So first one, let's go to this one from Susan Morgan. It says, what is the average life of kitchen appliances in 2025?
Well, Paul McDonald used to be our service manager way back in the day, and he's now head of service for like a national buying group. He said 6 to 10 years. I think you can get more than that. I think you do have to, like for ice makers that are separate, you do have to clean them out. You should clean out the compressors in your refrigerator, either by, if it's top compressor, cleaning that up professionally, or below, getting rid of the lint and the dirt and everything. And there's a little more maintenance to it. I think you get a little more than that. I've been in my place since 2017, 8 years. I've replaced an igniter, had a dishwasher service call, had a washer service call, but everything's running just fine. I don't anticipate. I have the Sub-Zero professionally cleaned every year.
Yeah, and I think too, a lot of, these older appliances from, the 80s that have been around for 25, 30 years or so, that's probably not going to be the case for the most part anymore. But again, the appliances today are just so much more energy efficient, water efficient, depending on what it is. So you're definitely getting a much more efficient appliance nowadays for sure, where you may not get the longevity that you had before. And there's certainly, like you said, some maintenance that you want to do on some of them to kind of extend that as much as possible. But today's appliances are just so much more efficient in general too. So let's go to this one from Linda K. It says, how to deal with appliances delivered with cosmetic damage. I'm getting the runaround from GE, even though damage reported within 7 days.
Of course you are. I mean, you're gonna get the runaround, and I think there's a certain. I think it depends on how persistent you want to be. Typically, what they're trying to do is what a lot of, I would say, extended warranty companies and everything is just waiting for you to just stop. Right? I think you send a registered letter, report it to your credit card. It depends. I mean, but typically, we have damage and we'll give the customer choice. Customers, you get like whatever it is, say 10% off, or we'll deliver one to you the next day, right? But GE and a lot of the manufacturers use third party, so it's not that simple, right? Because who gets charged that? The company doesn't want to deal with it, neither does the third party, right? So that's where you're really caught. But stay with it, report it to your credit card. Hopefully, please tell me you paid it with a credit card,
Yeah, and this is too why, we always say it's so important to know like who's going to service the appliances, buy from someone that services, and ask these questions too, like, what happens if something's damaged? So of course, it stinks to be dealing with this now for sure. But it's something you want to ask kind of when you're buying those appliances. What happens when I need service? What happens if there's damage on delivery, and how do those things get handled?
Yeah, and delivery is another thing. We could have a separate webinar on delivery and installation because, everyone talks about how hard it is to get people, how hard it is to get skilled people. Well, think about delivery people, right? And we're mentioning really aspirational stuff like Thermador and Sub-Zero refrigerators that could weigh up to 800 pounds.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to go through your mind. It just does, because this is not shocking to me, unfortunately.
All right. This one from Glenn. Is Wolf coming out with an induction cooktop with knobs instead of digital controls?
I haven't seen it. Have you?
No, so not on the cooktop, but their ranges, so they do have the 30, 36, and a 48-inch range coming out where they will have options for knobs there. Really, the 48 is only knobs. So they're doing that more in the range, but not so much on cooktops. And it's not something you really see on cooktops in general. So that is kind of, no, not on cooktops, but yes, on ranges. All right, this next one is from Diana. Do you know who makes the deepest vent hood? Also, how high should a vent hood get installed?
Wait a minute. Do you know that makes the? Oh, I thought it was vent hood. Deepest hood you can get. I think Wolf and Thermador in 27. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the problem with that is if you install it, say 30 inches over the surface, which is it's 30 to 36, I believe, and your top.
Yeah, 30 is kind of optimal for sure.
You're going to clunk your head on the hood if you're tall, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which goes back to the first part of what we said is you're going to buy for who you are, right? I think 24 is enough, and almost every brand has it.
Yeah.
And typically in the specs, it's funny. I think I just have a video on this. How high do you hang a vent hood?
Mm-hmm.
We just have a video on that. I think it depends on what it is, what surface it is, what brand it is. They've got different, but typically 30 to 36 seems to be like the fat middle, what everybody recommends, but it does vary. And, check out it. We just put the video on YouTube, I think 2 days ago. So
there you go. This one's from Crystal. Do you recommend a retractable over the range hood vent to increase the catch area over the front burners when in use, but maintain a low profile when not in use?
they still make those, huh?
There's a
Those are
few.
yeah, I know the ones they have like that screen that comes that like flap that comes
Exactly.
down.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it'll catch a little bit more, but it's certainly not ideal.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have typically an over-the-range microwave. You're only having 350 to 400 CFM, and even that you need like a capture area. And I don't think a flap really is optimum, to be quite honest. Certainly better, but and I love over-the-range microwaves. And they're so inexpensive in a package, and they look good, and they put them off the counter. But if you cook, it's not your best option.
All right, let's go from this one from Patsy. It says, what's your opinion on drawer microwaves? They're really expensive.
Oh yeah, no question. That said, I have a drawer microwave that I never use. Yeah, I mean, it's a nice way. It pops out at you. It's at waist high. It takes it off the counter. It takes it off the counter. It takes it from under the counter, which was popular way back in the 80s and 90s a little bit. You could put it over your wall oven as a separate microwave, but it's still just as expensive. I think they're really expensive too. I like them from a design standpoint, but yeah, they are really expensive. I suppose you can get the Thermador 1-2 free, or the Sub-Zero rebate, or the Monogram where they'll give it to you free if you buy other expensive stuff.
Yeah.
You're still, so, yeah, it's still expensive.
Yeah, it's really just, it's not doing anything, really crazy or special that a normal microwave doesn't do. It's just really, for, like you said, a design. It's all about aesthetics, kind of hides it, kind of keeps it tucked away. So yeah, unfortunately, you're not getting any other crazy features with it, but that's really kind of the benefit of it.
We talked about relabeled brands. Well, Sharp makes them for everybody. You cannot buy this. I think there's another one coming out from China. But right now, every drawer microwave is made by Sharp. Unfortunately, Sharp makes it ugly for themselves. but they do have convection, right? They're the only ones with convection, but it's just not that attractive. But really, you could save a lot of money by just buying a Sharp kind of, or whatever the cheapest one that you like the look of the best. Good way to save $500.
Yeah. All right, this one's from Colleen. It says, is the Miele Induction Pro range with steam assist a good solution for a condo steam oven? I don't have room for the combo.
Kind of. You're not cooking a whole meal in steam, but it's going to cook better because it's got, think about it, right? Electric oven, it's advertised as the best, but it's a drier heat. So you are adding moisture. So you're adding some complexion and flavor, but you're not cooking in steam. So you're not getting, I'll give you an idea. I had steak strips this morning for breakfast. I don't know why I didn't eat yesterday's dinner. So I was a little bit hungry, and it comes out so tender. You're not going to get that with a steam assist. It's better than, it'll add some moisture and some flavor, and you're going to have the ability to bake bread because it's good for hardening crusts, right? But it's not the same.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right, this one from Beth. She says, is the Induction Freedom technology worth the price?
What do you think?
So it's certainly expensive. It's nice from a flexibility and just really not having to think about really where you're putting it. And it's nice that you can use any odd shaped pots or pans, or larger sizes, or sometimes even really small pots or pans. Because really the induction, we have kind of induction burners, it needs to fill a certain percentage of that burner at least. So it's nice if you have something maybe really small or something really large or odd shape, a griddle that you could put anywhere on there. But again, I would say that, like, even if you're comparing the Thermador Freedom to the Thermador Liberty, that Thermador Liberty has two really nice bridge burners with kind of the griddle shaped bridge on both sides. It has that heat shift where it kind of automatically adjusts the temperature, and you can really get even one like that for much less expensive than the Freedom.
Well, SKS is going to have their own Freedom cooktop,
yep.
Which means the price is going to change. The price is going to get lower. I like the Liberty. Liberty, you go back to forth, and you can change the ratings on the burners. Freedom is a cool thing. Like, it really depends on your level of cooking expertise. Like, they advertise like they're cooking shrimp, right? Shrimp is a delicate thing to cook. So they spread it out on a wide on the Freedom Induction, and they cook half, right? So they take that little shrimp and put it on the other half. That's cool. I think that's pretty interesting. It depends. I think it's a cool look. I think all your points are certainly valid. Whether it's worth $2,000 more to you is really up to you.
I think we got time for one more quick one here, and this one's from Linda, and it says, can you talk about heat pump dryers?
Sure. First of all, heat pumps have been around for a while. Heat pumps were actually invented in 1858, before the American Civil War, in Austria. And they became popular, interesting enough, in the 1970s with heat pump air conditioner heaters in response to OPEC's increase in oil. So what I'm saying, it's been around for a while. In fact, Miele went all heat pump in 2018. And really the way it works is compressor transferring heat through a heat exchanger with an evaporator taking out the moisture, the compressor heating up the moisture and doing it on a closed loop. So it just uses the air inside the drum. So it's very energy efficient, strikingly energy efficient. Someone says only $10 a month. I think it's more than that. Certainly in Massachusetts, California, we've got onerous electric bills around here. So I think it saves a lot of money. It's gentler on your clothes, certainly, but it takes longer. And the other thing is, who's going to fix it? right? Like I said in the beginning, if I said condenser, if I said compressor, exchanger, evaporator, what immediately comes to mind? Refrigerator, right? It's very similar to a refrigerator. So is a refrigerator tech going to fix this, or a dryer tech is going to have to learn this? So that's the other thing. But I love the heat pump dryer.
Yeah, the other nice thing with those too, like compared to the older condensation dryers, especially in like laundry and things, well, obviously laundry and the dryers, but like a lot of times you see these in tight spaces or closets and things like that. The old condensation dryers would emit that moisture right back into the room, where the heat pump also does not do that. So that's kind of a nice little feature with the efficiency, the speed, really just a really good technology. I think that's it for all the questions today, Steve.
Wow. That was good. We we do answer questions every other Thursday. Is it this Thursday or is it next week?
Next Thursday.
Yeah. So if you have questions, certainly we just have something dedicated to questions on Thursdays. So I think we answered pretty much everybody's, didn't we?
Just about. There was a lot of them. So we maybe missed a few of them, but there's a lot of them.
We'll get you next Thursday. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on April 23rd, is it, or something like that? Or that's a good one, because you can do so much on the outside now. It's fun. It's fun. I like relearning this stuff. So interesting. Thank you, Fran. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Joe, for creating this slide deck as well.
Thanks, everyone.